So my name is David Torres. As Aaron mentioned, I'm part of the developer relations team here based in New York. And you might have seen me in the forum as well. So I'm going to be talking to you today about open authorization. All right. Why not client logging? Why no more client logging? First, I guess you understand as developers how sensitive it is to store username and passwords for every account you got to manage. We got that same problem, right? And we put a lot of effort and a lot of resources on securing those credentials. Those are very, very critical. If someone compromises those credentials, can do a lot of harm to your AdWords accounts. So on your side as well, if you're keeping username and passwords, I bet you're doing a bunch of security things to keep them from being compromised. I hope so. So why also not client logging? Why client logging is not the best? Client logging was invented or was released by Google a long, long time ago. Not thinking on how, at that time, how the globalization of internet in general was going to go in terms of securing authentication. And it was along the ways of other companies and how other companies as well used to manage credentials. So we evolved and we created new standards, and now we're trying to push people out of them because they're not as secure, and we see it every day as any other standard. They get, for example, with client logging, we are seeing increasing hijacking of accounts. There are a lot of issues with client logging, like, for example, the OAuth tokens duration is 2 weeks. So even if your username and password is not compromised, if the OAuth token is compromised, whoever takes that OAuth token has 2 weeks to do whatever he wants with your account with that OAuth token. So that's why we want you to go to the next generation of the next standard of authorization, which is OAuth 2. What is OAuth 2? And why OAuth 2? Well, it's much secure. It's much secure. It does not require username and passwords to be exchanged by you or to be stored by you in any way. We handle that for you. So we do all the authentication and authorization for you. So all that handshake. And what we give to you are the OAuth tokens. So those are the ones that you need to store and you need to exchange with us. Definitely that goes that goes in a whole lot more secure way. The user can easily revoke the token. That's another painful step that a user has to take if you're using client logging. If for some reason username and passwords get compromised, that we have seen that, and we have seen an increase on that on companies getting compromised and username and password getting installed, and then having to request, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of users to go and change their username and password. If the access token got compromised, the only thing that the user has to do is not to come up with a new password or whatever. Just go to account and revoke that token, revoke that access. So how it goes, how OAuth 2 works. Well, there is a setup process in which you register your application with us. You tell us who you are, and then we give you some identifiers, client IDs and client secrets, that then you use in the whole exchange. So we know who you are as a developer and when you're requesting access on behalf of a user. And then you make what we call a token request. You redirect your user so they can go and so we can go and ask consent. But it's us, it's Google who's asking consent. It's through our servers to the user. Right? It's all secured through SSL. and against us. And when they give consent, then we grant you a token. We grant you a confirmation token that then you can exchange with for an access token. That's the one they're going to use to access the API. And then you call the API. One thing I want to mention is here very specific is that I'm going to be talking about two specific flows of the API of the standard, the OAuth standard, which are the web flow and the install applications flow. There are other flows in the standard, but I'm going to be advocating about those two specifics because we think those are the best suited for AdWords API. And I'm going to explain why. So talking about those two flows, with those two flows, you can request as well what we call a refresh token, which is really important for you because I know a lot of you, and I know this is bringing a lot of confusion and a lot of friction on migrating to OAuth 2. A lot of you have asked, well, if I need the user consent every time I need to access the API, how is that useful? With client login, I don't need. I only need to ask him username and password once, and that's it. Well, if you request a refresh token from us, there'll be only one user intervention or one user interaction. The consent will grant you a refresh token that you can use forever. So just with this nice diagram, it's explain the whole process. Basically, in your application, you do a token request, which is just a redirection of the user to our servers. As I mentioned, in our side, then we ask the user to log in. If he's not logged in already, we ask them for the consent to grant you access to whatever scope you're requesting. In this case, will be the AdWords API scope. And then we give you a code. That code then you use to exchange that confirmation code you use to exchange for an access code, which is then an access code and a refresh token, which are then the access token is the one that you're going to use to call the API. So this is how the console looks like. You go to API console. Then you register your application here. You might have to register redirect URI. It's really dependent on the flow that you're using. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And then you'll see this in the API console. This is a place where then you generate the client ID and the client secret. Again, those are two keys that are very, very important for you to do the whole flow. The next step, encode after. Now we jump into the coding part. That part was your part of doing manually, right, through the API console. Now, encode, after you have gotten that client ID, you just basically go to the authorization servers or redirect your user to the authorization servers, telling us, well, this is the scope I want to access. Telling us, I want you to ask the user for consent to access the AdWords API. And it will be very clear to the user that you're asking him consent to access his AdWords data. No more, no less. Okay? You can actually ask for more scopes if you're planning to access more APIs. As many scopes you add, as many different access that we're going to ask the user for his consent. And then you pass the client ID, which identifies you as a developer, so we know who you are. Then you either open a browser, redirect the user within your application. If you're a web application, you redirect the user to our page, to our authentication page. If you have a desktop application, you can embed a web view in it, for example. Or you can use worst case scenario, if it's not that critical to get, if you have your account's connected with an MCC and you need to do this once for your MCC and you're managing everything through the MCC, you can just copy and paste that URL in a browser and then use it through a browser, to a regular browser. So those are two different flows. We're going to touch on those in a second. In some way, the user gets to our web page, and then this authorization access is going to get back after his consent. With that one, you use it then to get the access token and refresh token. As I mentioned, access tokens expire within an hour. That makes it, that's a very important difference, as you can see, security difference with OAuth tokens. If an access token gets compromised, then whoever got that access token has only 1 hour, or what remains of that hour, since he got since he took it to access the API, then expires. So what you do, you use the refresh token to generate a new access token. And then, of course, be sure to store the refresh token so you don't have to ask the user consent again. As long as you have the refresh token, the user doesn't have to give you consent again. To go a bit more into the 2 different flows, so we have a good idea on how specifically they work. The web server flow, and what is in green is what it needs user intervention. And I'm talking about the whole flow. So you don't have the user consent yet. First, you need to get the user consent for both, for the web server flow, of course, as an install applications flow. So basically, you just send the user to this URL, and then you will then get a response, a redirect from the user to a callback that you set up on your site as the web server on the website server flow, in which you can capture that code, right? So basically, in the web server flow, we're assuming that you have a web page, which we can call back, and in which you're going to capture that code. In the install application flow, which is more meant for it could be, it's often confused with because I think one of the type of applications that kind of made popular this flow was the mobile applications. So it's often confused that it's to be used by mobile. And I don't know if you've seen in your phones, a lot of times when applications will ask for your consent to go to access certain, I don't know, Gmail APIs and things like that, you see how the flows goes in your Android phone or your iPhone phone, right? So this is the exact same web flow that you can use also for, you can also use for desktop applications or applications that are not web-based, right? Within your application, you either provide a URL for the user to copy and paste in his own browser, so he can do the first the first part, in which he gets the URL, pastes it in the browser, and then we display a code for the user as well to copy and paste. So there are 2 user interventions here. One is the part and he grants consent, and the other one is the part and he has to get the code and copy and paste it in your application. Or in the second case, in which your application implements like a web view within the application, then you go to you open that web view, you direct your user to them, and then the callback that we're going to send you is another URL that you can capture. That is, it not necessarily has to be a web page that exists. It's just a special URL that you can capture in your web view that you're embedding in your application, and to which we are going to also send the return code. So we're assuming that you have a web view in which you can get the URL that was redirected to, and you can get the code that is in that URL as a parameter. And I briefly mentioned that if you want to handle the refreshing of the tokens yourself and the calls against the API, not using our client libraries, then this is what you got to do. Whenever an access token has expired, you're going to get from the API, let's say you're making a campaign service call, you're going to get this error out of the campaign service call. The first error you see, the OAuth token invalid. That means that your access token has expired. You need to refresh it. Okay? It doesn't mean that it's invalid. It has been invalidated by the user. It means that you can refresh it. It just expired. On the other hand, if you get an invalid grant error, it actually means that the user went and revoked your token. So even if you have a refresh token, you will not be able to refresh it. You will have to get the user consent again.